as long as she got in. Yeah, that's the voucher.
I'd like to call the meeting to order at 6:04 PM. Can I have a roll call, please?
James Pearson,
Yes.
Anna Isabel Dos Reis Cuto,
Yes.
Amanda Carlo. Here. John Cambio. Bradford Mayer,
Here.
Dorothy Giacomoni,
Here.
Cody Rydell,
Here.
Don Cowart.
Here.
Thank you. And I'll entertain a motion to recess into executive session at 6:04 PM.
I make a motion that the committee recess into executive session at 6:04 PM to consider matters relating specifically to student matters, RIGL 42-46-5A8 homeschool requests, and approval of executive session minutes from February 27th, 2025, where the following items were discussed. Student matters, RIGL 42-46-5A8 homeschool requests, and approval of executive session minutes from February 13th, 2025.
I second.
Who was for Mr. Cambio?
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Cambio seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 7-0. We're in executive session. Thank you. the open session at 6:14 PM. Everyone could stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Could you remain standing for a moment of silence? Thank you. Superintendent Cowart, could you provide the safety notifications for the meeting?
In case of emergency and you need to vacate this room, you can exit the door you came in, turn to your left and go back down the hall. There's also an exit through that door. There's an office on the other side that has an exit to the outside.
Thank you. And Member Jack Boney, could you honor us with a reading of the mission statement?
The mission of the Coventry Public Schools is to inspire, support, and challenge all students in an inclusive community to be critical thinkers, effective communicators, reflective learners, responsible individuals, and global citizens.
Thank you. Next item is executive session report. During executive session, 2 votes were taken. The first to approve homeschool requests, the second to approve executive session minutes of February 27th, 2025. Both motions passed unanimously. Is there a motion to seal the records of the executive session?
And make a motion that the records of executive session be kept closed pursuant to sections 42-46-4 and 42-46-5.
Any further discussion? Yes, Member Dos Reis Kuto.
I have a correction to my name in page 1. It should be an O
Is this for the,
minutes.
that's the next item.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's okay. But noted, and we'll get to that. Any other questions? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Next item is approval of the minutes for February 27th, 2025. And Member Dos Reis Kuto, you had a correction.
Yes.
Could you repeat it? I'm sorry.
Correction to my name on page 1. It's an O versus a U.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions about the minutes? Seeing none, is there a motion to approve the minutes as amended?
I make a motion to approve the minutes of February 27, 2025 as amended, as presented and amended.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 7-0. I'll just take a brief moment to remind the committee, when you want to speak, make sure the little green light on the microphone is on so you can be heard. Otherwise, people on Zoom will not hear anything we say. Next item on the agenda is citizens' comments for topics that are listed on the agenda. If anyone gathered here today would like to speak during citizens' comments, please step up to the microphone, say your first and last name and address for the record. And I see no takers, so we can move to Zoom. For the person on Zoom, if you would like to speak during public comment, please raise your hand and wait to be called on. Going once, twice, 3 times. Citizens' comments for topics listed on the agenda is closed. Next item on the agenda is the Sodexo presentation for discussion. Superintendent Cowart, would you like to start?
Yes. So we've been partnering with Sodexo for a number of years, and they manage our food service program. Well, we meet with them regularly, and our leadership team here at the central office and the leadership team over at Sodexo has worked collaboratively on a number of different things. And we've been talking about school lunch and a lot of topics related to that lately. So we thought it was probably a good time for them to come in and present some information to you, answer any questions that you have. And so I'm gonna just turn it over to you. Just make sure the microphone's on, introduce yourselves, and Jim, you'll click through the presentation.
Yeah, the switch is right on the microphone.
On the top.
Okay. Hi, everybody. I'm Alana Conca. I'm the general manager. This is my first year here in Coventry. Ashley Plant.
Good evening. I'm Ashley Plant, the district manager for Sodexo. I've been with Sodexo for 15 years, and I have been the district manager overseeing Coventry Public Schools for about a year and a half, a little over a year.
I've been with Sodexo for 4 years, but like I said, this is my first year in Coventry. I spent bulk of my time in Providence before coming here. If we can go to the next slide. So the presentation is split into like 4 categories. The 4 pillars for student well-being. First one being nourishment, where we'll talk about local foods in our FFVP program, achievement with our grants and financial performance, community, our upcoming Future Chef competition, and our JWU partnership. And the last part is where are we headed next? Next slide. So the first one is about our local foods. Each month we do a local day where we highlight local farms, vendors that we partner with. Some of them are listed there on the screen. Last year we purchased over 20,000 pounds of local foods, and Sodexo as a whole purchased over $400,000 spent on local purchasing. There's a couple pictures there of our actual meals from that day and some of our food service staff. Catanzaro's is a big one. Soggy is probably our most popular. The Ashley Confections actually goes throughout the month, but the local day is once a month where we like to highlight those vendors.
And Shri is a local partner. It's actually, we partner with Alison Bologna. That's her company. And we have a local muffin of the month, which is wonderful. For the month of March, it's our Shamrock muffin. So the kids are very excited for that.
So our FFVP program, Fresh Fruit and Vegetable Program, we partner with Rocks, and they every Tuesday and Thursday deliver a different fresh fruit or vegetable to the 3 schools that were awarded, which is Black Rock, Tioga, and Hopkins Hill. Black Rock was new this year. And they were allotted a certain amount of money for this year. Gets them to try different fruits and vegetables that they may not have tried before. I know today it was papaya and strawberries, so it's different things that we may not have on the menu, but for them to try while they're in their class. This goes to their classroom. Next slide, please. Grants. So we have been awarded a $10,000 equipment grant from RIDE, which we do plan on purchasing a new convection oven for our middle school. We do have some equipment there that is very old that we would love to replace. We just haven't gotten our award letter yet, but as soon as we get that, we will purchase it. We have applied for from New England Dairy, their Chill Out with Cold Milk contest. So we have the opportunity to win a free milk cooler. And they also have another grant for different equipment where we would have the opportunity to do some different smoothies or hot chocolate milk. I believe they have a milk dispenser too. So we'll wait and see if we got anything from that. Next slide. Achievement for this year. So our numbers go through February for what I have here. We've served over 60,000 breakfasts and over 189,000 lunches. We're way over what we were at last year, over 7,000 more breakfasts this year, over 2,800 more lunches than we did at this point last year. We have a lot more students that are free this year, which is awesome. And we've tried to switch up the menu to get more students involved in participating in breakfast and lunch. One big thing has been the nacho bar at the high school. We do that every day, and it's gotten us at least over 100 more lunches every day there. So that was an exciting addition this year. Our participation for breakfast is 19%. That's our biggest goal to try and bring up. We don't have a ton of kids that eat breakfast, but we're trying to switch up our menus to try and get more kids to eat breakfast. Trying to switch up the service model if we can. And lunch is at 51%. Go next slide. So this coming Wednesday is our first Future Chef competition here in Coventry. I've done it in Providence and it's a very successful event. The kids love it. We had 39 students submit recipes here in Coventry with, the theme was Complete the Plate. So they picked their favorite main entree and we'll provide sides for them to complete their plate that night. But they're going to partner. We picked 6 finalists. I was going to do one from every school, which would have been 5, but Western Coventry submitted over 17. So I said I had to pick a second one from there. And actually Kristen Bagley, the principal there, has done this competition in Providence. So she was very excited about it and I'm sure promoted it heavily at her school. So that is this coming Wednesday. And we have 6 chef partners from Johnson & Wales to partner with those students to prepare their recipes that they submitted. And we'll have 3, maybe 4 judges to judge them based on originality and ease of preparation, healthy attributes, their presentation to the judges, their presentation of their plate. So I think it's going to be very successful here in Coventry as well.
And the winner gets put into a final pool of all the winners in the Northeast region. So we are very excited and hopeful that one of our participants from Coventry will be put into that award pool as well.
Mhm. And depending on what the recipe is, it could be something that gets added to the menu, the elementary menu as well. JWU partnership, actually this week, we're working on that with Hopkins Hill was chosen to participate with the Students Take Charge lesson program. They are able to have Farm Fresh staff come into their classrooms. They partner with Julie, the phys ed and health teacher there. They will go in during her health class and talk about local foods and fruits and vegetables. And they had also a recipe submission from the students in their 5th grade classes. And they narrowed it down to 2 that were taste testing in their classes this week. It's actually beef stew and a mashed butternut squash that showcases local products, local produce. And we did 1 on Monday and we have 2 more tomorrow, and whichever one that they vote is their favorite, we'll do a school-wide taste test April 10th. And it's very fun to watch them analyze these different recipes. I didn't think that beef stew or butternut squash would be something that they might pick, and the students, they looked at beef stew and they're like, I don't know if I want to try that, but it smelled really good, so they wanted to try it. And then we had kids that had seconds as well. So definitely think it'll be something that they'll like. I actually had a student tell me that they wanted it on the lunch menu, which I would never think that they would want. But that's an exciting program that they are, I don't know exactly how many schools they picked, but they're one of a few that from the state that was chosen. Next slide, please. So our goals for this school year, Nutri-Slice coming into this year. I know Coventry loves their paper menus, but we also have Nutri-Slice as the link on the Coventry District website, where we are able to, as we plan our menus for the month, they go straight to that website. So it's more up-to-date menus if we make any changes. And it's also great for the school nurses because it lists all their nutrition and allergen information. It has like a calculator where they can go in and calculate what they need for diabetic students or students with severe allergies. So it's gone really well for the nurses also. Future Chef was something that coming in we wanted to do. Surveys, we actually had some from Hopkins Hill this past week fill out some surveys for us based on what they like for lunch, what they like for breakfast, what they don't like for breakfast, what they don't like for lunch. Do they have enough time to eat breakfast and lunch? So we're going through those results now to try and get some feedback from them. I also have one going out to the Western Coventry students. It was supposed to be this week as well. We did the Healthy High School Challenge. Oh, I skipped Share Tables. Share Tables is something that we implemented this school year as well. It's an opportunity for students who have their reimbursable meal, but they may not want the fruit or vegetable that they took or a component from their meal. They're able to put it at the share table for another student who may still be hungry. So it's an opportunity for us to have less food waste and for another student who may want something else to eat to take that. And if it doesn't get taken, then the school nurse is able to take it to her office as well. The Healthy High School Challenge, we had placed 42nd. It was for us to promote the healthy snacks that we sell a la carte at the high school. We have students that buy snacks every day, but there were certain snacks that we were promoting more so. And the kids love those a la carte snacks. Next slide, please. So starting actually March 31st, we are moving to a Bright Bites Kitchen menu, and it's going to be just for elementary. There's a couple pictures there of West Warwick with the new marketing. We're going to be putting up some new marketing this month to prepare for Bright Bites Kitchen. It's a little different menu than what we currently have. It promotes sustainability and some local favorites, vegetarian options. It has 4 options instead of the 5 that we've been doing, but I think it's going to work out better for our students because it's going to be more things that they actually want to eat. And I know it's gone well in other
It has gone
districts.
very well. We see a 3% increase in participation district-wide when Bright Bites has been implemented this school year. And as Lana stated, heavily focused on sustainability, local, fresh, more scratch cooking, and also we have had a great success with our global favorites. So there's an Indian butter chicken that our kids absolutely love. And I was very surprised. I was like, I don't know if that's going to go over well. They love it. So it's really introducing new culturally relevant foods to our students as well.
And we had talked about, to Paula and I, my operations manager, about doing tastings during lunch so that if we serve something and they're like, I don't know, we'll give them a little taste of it on their plate with whatever else they're getting so that they can see, okay, maybe next time I want to get that item. And I think something like that would be a great option for that. Next slide, please. We started this year doing a Star School of the Month. We have some great staff here in Coventry. A lot of them that go above and beyond the expectation for their students. The first month we had picked Black Rock because in December they had done the Elf on the Shelf with their students. Wasn't something that I asked them to do, wasn't something their school asked them to do, but the kids loved it. They hid it around the cafeteria and moved it, and the kids really loved that. They didn't have to do that, but they chose to do it with their kids. The next month was Western Coventry. They do a great job. They're at work every day. They do a great job with planning their menus for the month. Washington Oak was the one for last month. Brenda knows every single one of her kids that comes through the line. And she works with Sharon very closely. They both are exceptional with their students. Next slide, please. So the next 2 slides are just some pictures from the district. We have some pictures on there of the nacho bar is the bottom left one, nacho meal. We started Walk on the Run this year, where it's some sweet chili Doritos, and it has a teriyaki chicken, and it's like a walking nacho, so it's in the bag. We, for local day, had done a broccoli cheddar soup with local broccoli from Maine and a grilled cheese. For Valentine's Day, we did a few different promotions with a hot chocolate parfait, and we had done a tomato soup with the grilled cheese, had a heart pressed into the grilled cheese. Some different things just to get them excited for lunch. And we had done green eggs and ham this past Monday or last week for the elementary students for Dr. Seuss Day. They were a little concerned when they saw the green eggs and ham, but it was a great day for our numbers for sure. Yes. And then there's some other pictures there that just showed some different food options that we have. Some pictures here of our staff from Valentine's Day. There's actually a picture on the bottom from the fresh fruit and vegetable program. Our breakfast setup, some kids going through the line for the green eggs and ham. Top left is Apple Crunch Day, where we showcase some local apples. And our deli bar at the high school and the nacho line there in the middle that we've added that are very popular at the high school. And I think that's it. Yes. Thank you, guys. Any
Thank-
questions for us?
Thank you. Any comments or questions, members of the committee? And I see member Jack Boney.
That was great.
Thank you.
Thank you. I really enjoyed that. I just have a question about the shared table at the school.
Mhm.
Do you see like a certain type of food that's always being left at the shared table? And if you
Um,
do you notice that it's being eaten by others?
Yes, so we've had craisins and we've had some strawberry cups that were left in bulk there. And we've also had yogurts or milk that the students leave there, but we do also have other kids taking them as well. So not much is really going to waste. And if it is that day, it goes to the nurse and she's able to serve it to a student who may not be feeling well or needs to take it with their medication or something like that. So it's really helped with the food waste for us. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Member Carlo.
I have two questions. I don't know if one's for Don, but I'll ask the first one. Do you have any contests set up for middle school or high school kids?
Not at this moment, but I do think if the Future Chef for us goes really well, I think it's something that we would like to do for middle and high school. I don't know if other districts do that,
Yeah,
but
so Springfield Public Schools in Springfield, Massachusetts has expanded their program because it was so popular at their elementary level. So this is our first year, and so we are excited to hopefully expand it to further, because I think the high school kids would.
Especially the middle school,
Yeah.
she's 12, she's likes to cook now, so.
yeah.
Second question, I don't know if it's for Don or for them, but who decides on where the grant money goes? Like you're replacing fridges and stoves, like how do you decide on what schools get it and why? Or if
So
that's a
that-
Don question.
That does come to us as far as, looking at the schools and seeing who has the most need for something new. We are also purchasing a piece of equipment for the high school this year just because we need it desperately. But the oven this year was a big priority because last year when they got the equipment grant, it was something that they weren't able to do. So it kind of just got put down on the list. So now this year we're able to do it for them.
So whatever school has the highest need, if we know something's broken, something's aged out, it's too expensive to replace, those go to the top of the list.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Member Dos Reis Kuto.
Well done. I really like this presentation. But I have a question for the green eggs. What
Yeah.
did you use to make them green?
It was green food coloring.
And was that a safe food coloring?
We did check it, yes.
Yes. And nutritional information was sent out to all the nurses ahead of
Yes,
time so
all
that
the
they were
nurses
aware.
did everything.
Okay.
Yes.
And then my other question is, so all this is really great and the fact that we're using local foods as well. But how do you see the feasibility and the length of implementing so that it's completely local and it's healthy food versus, the French fries and the fast food, like the chicken nuggets that would go away somehow?
Right.
So it's a balancing act for sure. Like any budget in your home or in running a business, you have to prioritize. And we, in this district and in my district, we prioritize the local produce, the fresh foods as much as we possibly can, but we also have a budget that we have to stick to. So it is a delicate balance. I don't ever foresee that any school lunch program can be 100% local. It's just really challenging with the price of food, but we do our best to not only get as much as we possibly can. Like we're actually doing a granola tasting next week with Shri. Like we're really trying to focus on the things that the students will take, enjoy, and eat so that money is going to them and not in the trash. But then also we have to understand that if they're kids and they like chicken tenders, we're looking at whole muscle products. So as opposed to a dark and white meat chicken nugget, can we eventually move to a whole muscle white chicken tender? Can we move to a whole muscle white chicken fillet? It's more expensive, but like, what can we do to make it work?
That's the answer I was looking for. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? All right, seeing none, I'll just say thank you very much for the presentation.
you.
Very informative and looking forward to continue working to improve our program.
Awesome.
Thank
Thank
you,
you so
guys.
much.
Thank you.
Have a great night. You too.
Next item on the agenda is Medicaid presentation for discussion. Superintendent Cowart.
I think I mentioned this at the last meeting. We've done a lot of work this year with our Medicaid reimbursement. And so I thought with me bringing it up so often at so many meetings that it's probably a good idea to do some sort of overview presentation so that everybody on the committee and in the community that hears us talking about it knows exactly what it is and what it means. So Mrs. Anzalone has put together a presentation for you, and she'll be able to answer any questions at the end.
Good evening, everyone. So if you go to the next slide, Jim, thank you. The first thing is I put up here kind of what I'm going to go over today in the presentation. It's a very short presentation, and I hope to kind of give you a clear understanding of Medicaid in our schools and how those reimbursements come back to us as a way to take care of some of the services that are health related that we provide to some of our students. So what is Medicaid? So Medicaid pays for health and related services for students that have IEPs, but are also Medicaid eligible. So not all health and related services that are provided to our students are reimbursable. It's for only students that are eligible for Medicaid, okay? And I hope that definition is clear for you. And at the end, if you need a little bit more information, I certainly can give it to you. Here's the history of our reimbursement over the past 3 years and then this year, what it looks like. And if you look back to the 21-22 school year, you can see that year we had a reimbursement of a little over 700,000. In 22 and 23, it dipped to 645,000. And 23-24, it was down to 485,000, which caught our attention. Why? What's going on? So we started to do a little bit of digging into that information. And when I say we, I say collectively at central office, Fred Chalkart, Allison Roby, myself, and Dina Wilson, who is the administrative assistant that works on, has Medicaid as kind of something she submits for us to the company that we work with, which is called CompuClaim. This year so far, and that's as of the beginning of February, and I'm going to be able to update that. So far, as of the beginning of February, we have already collected close to 800,000. And Chris updated on your financial statement today. It's actually closer to 870, Chris, somewhere around there, 880,000. So we are already have met at this point in the year what we projected based on the work that we were going to do this year and then gone above. So we are projecting to have more revenue in that area at the end of this year, because with a good chunk of time left, you know, I have a projection that I'd love to throw out there, but I think Chris is saying roughly around 950,000, which is 150,000 more than what we had put into our revenue column. So it's working. The investment and the time in training staff and kind of really reminding people the importance of it. So who logs for these services? This is a list of the staff that can log for reimbursement from our nurses, our mental health professionals, our special education teachers, our therapists for speech and language, occupational therapy, physical therapy. Our paraprofessionals can also log any kind of special transportation that we need for students that are Medicaid eligible, and then out-of-district tuition. And really the key is training this group and also follow through, working with them to make sure, because, you know, you can forget. And so it's really about training and follow through on how to do it, continuing to support. An administrator reached out the other day to us and said, we need an update. We need to have some more conversations. Even though we have trained a few times, I think that's important for people to be able to ask and still get our support if they need it. Next slide. This is up to the minute kind of distribution, the entire pie of money that we have already gotten reimbursed for, where a good chunk of it is coming from. So out of district tuition, that we pay for students that receive those services outside of Coventry Public Schools that we pay for. That's a good chunk of it, but you can see our paraprofessionals bring in another good chunk of money. And I'm going to talk a little bit about what these particular staff members do in order for us to be able to ask for reimbursements. And then you can see the other pieces of the pie. There is huge increases in paraprofessionals this year, speech and language, case management, which is our special education teachers, and also in specialized transportation. So those are where some of the biggest increases are this year that have really pushed us, which is where we heavily invested our training, starting last year. And then into, I think the last training that we did was sometime in October. And Allison Roby has gone out and done some individual training for people all year. So, and again, Fred and Allison, jump in if there's anything I'm forgetting. I appreciate it. Next slide. So I know it's hard for you all, it's definitely hard for me to see from here, so I'm definitely not going to read it, but I wanted you to see the types of services that our staff provide that are reimbursable. And I'll particularly focus right now on the paraprofessionals. There's a specific type of service, like individual services in the paraprofessionals, like queuing students, feeding, navigating, transitioning, toileting. There's those kinds of services that our paraprofessionals do every day. The difference is, just so you know, it's not every time they do it. Remember, there's a couple of things. One, it has to be on an individual basis for a period of time of 15 minutes. And it also, at least 15 minutes, it can extend past that, but it's in 15-minute increments. And the student also has to be Medicaid eligible. So, you know, there's a lot of, I think, tracking or kind of keeping a quick tally of when did I do this, how much time, that is the part that I think is probably the most challenging, which is why we encourage our staff to fill out the logs either daily or weekly, because you can forget those things. And they have been doing a fantastic job on that. This is an example of a logging page for a paraprofessional. It's a computerized logging system. And you can see that this particular staff member who's logging for one student has logged for all of last week. It's in yellow. But you can see up above the calendar, all they really do is put a check mark in for any one of those things they did with that student. They don't actually have to chart the time as a paraprofessional, but they check off up there what are the things that they did with that student on that particular day. And then they put their total time in there that they have done those types of activities. They don't do each individual one, collectively, all of those things together. And then they submit it for each one of their students. And most paraprofessionals have somewhere between 2 and 5 students on their caseloads that they see regularly that they would be logging for. It takes roughly, if you were logging on a course of a week, it takes you roughly anywhere between, I would say, and maybe a paraprofessional could speak up and say this, I'd say it takes roughly around 3 to 5 minutes per student if you were doing it on a weekly basis. So overall, on a weekly basis, it'll take them about that much time. The teachers and related service providers have a little bit of a different situation where they actually choose the service that they're providing. If it's like a speech and language teacher, they talk about what they're actually, the type of service that they're providing. They also put the time, and they have to write 5 words in that box there, or more, but 5 words that basically kind of details a little bit about what that service is. So provided articulation services, on the letter TH, on the digraph TH, whatever it is that they're doing, they write it in that box, and then they submit. So I know that seems like a very, very brief overview, but I wanted to make sure that you understood when every day every month you come in here and look at that budget line, it says Medicaid and what that revenue is. It really is the work that the teachers and the staff are doing in our building and trying to be reimbursed for that work. And so I want to thank all of our teachers and our staff who have been incredibly committed to helping us to improve our revenue in that area. And I want to give a special shout out because Allison Roby, our Assistant Director of Special Ed, has taken this on as just a project of hers and really has done a nice job of tracking and supporting people across the district in this process. Any questions?
Thank you. Any questions, members of the committee? Member Mayor.
Thank you for the presentation. And if these Medicaid reimbursements were to disappear in part or in total, I'm assuming it would have a significant impact on the students that need the most supports, correct?
I don't know if it would be, and this is probably a Dawn question, I don't know if it would be an impact on students because we are required, and actually Fred and Allison, we are required by law because it's in an IEP to provide those services.
Okay.
So it doesn't impact the students. We still have to provide it whether we get reimbursement or not. The place it would impact is our budget.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Member Carlo.
So if I understand this correctly, these are only services for kids who have Medicaid.
Yes.
So it doesn't, like, if like the nurse at Hopkins Hill was saying she needed things, that this isn't that category.
Right. So there
Okay.
are nurses at like Hopkins Hill or sometimes we have nurses that are assigned to particular students. If those students are Medicaid eligible, we can submit. Now we don't get full reimbursement for their services. It's partial reimbursement, but we do get some reimbursement for providing a nurse. And that is dictated by what is in their individualized ed plan. So those are things, again, are required by law that a team decides. So it's not like, oh, we can give away everything to the kids who have Medicaid. That isn't how it works. It's really determined at a team meeting. And we don't know whether students as a principal or as a central office person, we don't know whether students are Medicaid eligible when we're deciding whether they need those services or not. Those services are dependent upon students' individual needs. When that happens at that meeting where they receive those services, we ask parents permission to be able to submit for reimbursement. And the parent would sign a document saying, yes, it doesn't affect their health insurance. It doesn't affect anything else other than it allows us to try to get reimbursement. If the parent says no, then we would not be reimbursed. If the parent signs, which the majority do, I would say, would you guys agree? The majority of parents do. Then when we go into log, we would be able to see if the students are Medicaid eligible, whether or not we receive payment for it. That.
Member Dos Reis Kuto.
I just want to say thank you to everyone that is dedicated to inputting the information in the system because this ultimately does help our bottom line.
It does.
So thank you for their hard work and being able to do this. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions, members of the committee? All right, see none. I'll say thank you for the presentation. I think it makes it clear, even for me, who's been on here forever, more clear about something I wasn't really as up to speed on as I am now. So thank you very much for the info. Next item on the agenda is recall of certified staff, SRP, for discussion.
I put this on the agenda because, last year was a challenging year and we had a lot of layoffs in both the CTA and the SRP staffing. And, we were in a position where we laid off some folks. And then as the year ends and we start going through, retirements and all the different other things that change our staffing, we're then able to call people back. And when we recall people back into their position or another position, it allows them to come back to work. And so at the end of last year, moving into beginning of this year, we had called back many of the people that had been laid off from our SRP union, but there were some that were still on layoff. And when a position becomes available, you know, one of the things that we do right away is reach out to our staff on layoff. And if they're, you know, certified or qualified to do that job, we ask them if they'd like to come back to that position. So we were able to recall 2 more people. So I brought it to your attention because I think it's important to identify and also communicate to you in the community that, you know, we're even this far along in the year, because it's March, we're still recalling people when we can. And so these 2 folks that are on the list that we provided you were recalled. I did not put this down as a vote. It was actually just more of a discussion because I already called them back to the positions because the positions are open and available, and I don't think it requires a vote to call them back. But I did want you to, you know, read their names, and if there was any discussion, you could have that. But I just wanted to acknowledge the fact that we are continuously going through this process and doing whatever we can to make sure that anybody who was unfortunately laid off has an opportunity to come back when an opportunity presents itself.
Thank you. Any comments or questions, members of the committee? All right, I see none. Thank you for that update. If no one objects, we are going to table or postpone the school calendar discussion. The school calendar is not ready yet for an agenda item. I see no objections. So we can move on to item F, resolution supporting House Bill 5399 and Senate Bill 0334, the Education and Property Tax Relief Act, for discussion and vote. Did you want to start?
I will start. So there's a lot going on in the General Assembly this year on a lot of different things. There are resolutions coming from a lot of different directions, and there's different bills being put forward. And some of them do significantly impact education in some way, shape, or form. This particular bill was brought to my attention. There had been conversation about it already because of the widespread concern about unfunded mandates. You know, we did a whole presentation and we talked about unfunded mandates. So this was brought forward as an act relating to education in terms of Equity and Property Tax Relief Act. And it was brought in by, there's a Senate and there's a House version of this bill, because you need both houses to be able to eventually make something become a law. So you can read through what it is, but essentially the summary of it all is that it proposes that if something is given to us from the Rhode Island Department of Education and funding doesn't come with it, that we don't have to do it. And if we are planning to not do it, we just need to notify this Department of Ed that we're not. So I'll give you an example. If they said you have to do right to read training, which we just finished or almost finished, and we know to train all our staff on right to read is going to cost the district $100,000, and Department of Ed is giving us no money for that for that training to happen, just the mandate that it has to happen. If you read through what this proposes, we could theoretically turn around and say to the Department of Ed, we're not going to be able to afford to do this when we're dealing with economic difficulties, financial challenges, and we're notifying you that we're not going to be able to implement this mandate due to the fact that it doesn't come with funding. So Mr. Pearson and I kind of worked together and drafted a resolution kind of outlining our support for this. I'm not sure where it's going to go, but in a current economic climate that we're in, and our challenges with our deficit and in our budgets, it's important that if there's something that's going to give us some relief, that we support that. So I'll let Mr. Pearson kind of add some words to that, and then we can go ahead and move on it.
Yep. So I first became aware of these bills. There was a press release put out, but also we heard from the Warwick School Committee chairperson who talked about these during the RIASC School Committee 101 training. So some of you may be familiar with that also. If no one minds, I'm actually going to read the resolution. That's something we often do, but this one's short enough. I won't lose my voice. The resolution of the Coventry Public School Committee in support of Rhode Island House Bill H 5399 and Senate Bill S 0334. Whereas the Coventry Public School Committee is committed to providing a high-quality education to all students while ensuring the responsible and equitable use of financial resources. And whereas the Rhode Island General Assembly has introduced House Bill H 5399 and Senate Bill S 0334, which amends the Education Equity and Property Tax Relief Act to allow school districts to opt out of mandates that are not fully funded by the state. And whereas unfunded mandates place a significant financial burden on school districts, forcing them to divert limited resources from essential educational programs, staff, and student services. And whereas H 5399 provides school districts with greater fiscal flexibility and autonomy by allowing them to prioritize expenditures that best serve their students without being penalized in terms of state aid. And whereas this legislation promotes local decision-making and financial accountability while ensuring that school districts are not forced to implement costly mandates such as high-quality curriculum mandates, $1,069,334, out-of-district transportation, $1,323,339, and career and technical education school choice, $2,642,280, without adequate state funding or cost sharing from the state. Now therefore be it resolved that the Coventry Public School Committee strongly supports House Bill H 5399 and urges the Rhode Island General Assembly to pass this critical legislation, and be it further resolved that copies of this resolution shall be sent to the Governor of Rhode Island, members of the Rhode Island General Assembly, the Rhode Island Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, and other relevant stakeholders to advocate for the passage of H 5399 and S 0334. That is the resolution. Any comments or questions on the resolution? Member Jack Voning.
The career and tech education school choice without adequate state funding or cost sharing from the state. So a child who wants to come to Coventry, or if there's a program a child needs outside of Coventry, they still have the option, but we're asking for assistance, correct?
It's the cost related to out of career and technical education school choice. You know, we've talked about the costs in the past, and I think a lot of those costs are around where we have similar programs in Coventry, but someone chooses to go to another district to play sports, or for whatever reason they choose to, smaller class sizes, maybe it's that. So this is a way of saying that the state should be doing more and even possibly funding out of district tuition costs for career and technical education choice.
And if I can add, in that portion of the resolution, it says such as, because that's a laundry list of examples of things that we spend funds on. It's not saying where we want to eliminate all those things. It's just saying, here are some examples of the most expensive things that we've had to pay for without any additional funding to go with them. So it's not a list of where we want to eliminate these things. It's just an example of things that are impacted when we don't have funding.
Any other comments, questions? Member Carlo.
So as I read, I just want to make sure I'm completely understanding this. We're gonna say, we're gonna send this and adopt this, but when those decisions come across to be made, who makes those decisions on which things that we're not gonna fund anymore if this is granted?
So that's a school department, school committee decision, right? So
Okay.
we would never make a decision that has a financial budgetary impact, because as a body, the school committee oversees, you have fiscal responsibility for the school department. And so any decisions we would make in regards to what this law would potentially provide us an opportunity to opt out of would have to come before this committee.
So if there's a curriculum that comes across our desk, let's say, that we really like, but we're not getting any funding for, we could still potentially vote to still have it.
Yeah, so I'll give you an example. So the example I gave earlier about the Right to Read Act, and we had to do training of all our teachers. And I think it cost us, Mrs. Anzalone, was like $80,000, I think, to train, no, more than that, $100,000 to do all of that. but it's actually really great training. And a lot of the teachers that have had the training have implemented the strategies that they learned as part of that, especially the people who went through the proficiency training. So that might be an example of something we'd say it's unfunded, but we think it's important because it impacts students. And so that one, we're not going to try to opt out of that. But we could turn around and say, but transporting kids all over the state for CTE programming is something that we just can't afford to do. So we want to opt out of that. So if somebody wants to go to a CTE program in another school district, then they would just have to provide their own transportation or attend Coventry. If that's just an example, I'm just saying.
If we opt out of that transportation, does that opt us out of receiving students as well?
It could if that committee did that. But the reality is our current situation is we are upside down.
Mhm.
We are putting out more than we are bringing in. And so it's nice to have the tuitions coming in and they're getting higher and it's improving, but we're still upside down.
Mhm.
And I think it's hard to make decisions about, not restricting kids who are coming in when we're losing so many kids going out.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Member Mayor.
If we decide to pass this evening, would we also, I know at our meeting with the town council in December, they said if there was any legislation that they could support to help us financially, that they would be willing to submit a similar resolution that said the same thing, or if we pass this, are we going to ask them to do that as well?
We can absolutely send them a copy. I think it says at the end, anybody else
Relevant stakeholders.
relevant stakeholders. So we can absolutely send the manager a copy and ask him to put it on the town council agenda. And if they want to support it, they can do so as well.
Thank you.
Member Rydell. Rydell.
Where do I sign?
On this piece of paper that we're going to send down soon.
We have to vote first. Any further comments or questions? All right, seeing none, is there a motion to approve the resolution?
I make a motion to approve resolution supporting House Bill H 5399 and Senate Bill S 0334, the Education and Property Tax Relief Act.
Second.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 7-0. And I'm going to sign and pass it down for everyone to sign. Thank you. Sorry. Thank you, everyone. There we go. Next item on the agenda is monthly finance report for discussion.
Sure. So every month we come forward with you with a financial monthly report. We give you a summary and then we give you a breakout of expenses and revenues. Chris was out the first meeting of the month, but he is back and Ming and Chris worked together to put this for you. The news is overall good, right? We're tracking well with our revenue and our expenses are pretty stable. I know Chris is on crutches. If you want to make your way up there, you can, Chris, if you think you need to add anything. Or we can bring a microphone to you, but if you have any questions, we'll answer them, but we definitely, and the Medicaid number that Amy was talking about is also included.
Okay. Thanks. Yeah, no, pretty simple update here. I think the new school committee is familiar with the reports that we've been sharing the last few months or this year since you've taken up your office. I would just highlight a couple things. You know, as Amy talked about earlier, the Medicaid continues to be strong. We've seen realized just about 830,000 in revenue through February, and that doesn't really even count some Medicaid admin claims that sort of lag behind and we'll record later when those are finalized and we receive them. Those are on a quarterly basis. So we did up the projection column for Medicaid by like $100,000, which is probably conservative, but this is all, we're in sort of new territory, so we don't want to overestimate it. We'll keep updating it, you know, as we go through the year based on you know, continued results that we see and what comes in. So overall, our revenues that we've received to date is about 67%. You know, we're 8 months through the school year, the fiscal year. So that would be, you'd expect about 66, you know, 67%, you know, if everything was linear. And so that's, you know, we're right in line there with 67%. On the expense side, you know, one notable thing, I did increase the projection for benefits. I think that there was a lot of moving parts last year with trying to do some cuts and people, you know, coming and going and then needing to, you know, bring some people back. So, you know, just looking at it, it's slightly above that 66.5, 67%. It's at like 68%. So I thought it would make sense to increase that by about 100,000. We'll continue to monitor that as we go through the year. But overall, what it, you know, in the bottom right of the gray table, you'll just see we're still in line to end with what we expect, a surplus of about $140,000, which is our goal, because that's the deficit reduction amount that the town is giving to us. So if we have a surplus at the end of the year, that will close and that will go towards the accumulated deficit and try to bring that down. Otherwise, if anybody has any questions, you know, happy to try to answer them.
Thank you. Any comments or questions on the monthly finance report? I see none. Thank you for the update. It's good to have this information and good to see we're in line. Next item on the agenda is fiscal year 2024 audit and deficit reduction plan update for discussion.
A few things, and Chris can jump in. So, you know, this particular agenda item has been very fluid for us over the last 5 or 6 days because we've been working on these numbers and we've sent them to the town, and then we sent them to the Auditor General, and then we got some feedback in the interim, so we adjusted them. Then we sent them again, but then we had a meeting today with the Auditor General and Municipal Finance and the town leadership, and we made another adjustment. So this one is like hot off the presses. And one of the things I had Jackie do, and I'm very happy and thankful to her, is this was in your original budget binder, this 5-year projection and the assumption sheet. So I just had her copy and hole punch them for you. So you can plop those into your binder in place of your other ones, so that what you're looking at is the most up-to-date version of this projection. I also had Jim put it up because I think there's a few things you need to take note of. So the first thing we did is our original 5-year projection did not include any additional local revenue, right? If you remember, there was no additional local revenue. We anticipated some state aid, and then the rest of it was us working on our budget based on us budgeting over the next, this year being year one and then the next 4 years after. Then the state aid came in higher than we projected. So we redid this budget to include the increase in state aid. And that plays its way out through the rest of the columns. And then once the town did their revenue projection where they said, here's what we're willing to give you in terms of your local allocation. And we then built our budget up to that number. What Chris and I did is we, talked to the town manager and finance director, and we went ahead and put the local appropriation in. So we went from no local appropriation in to putting in exactly what they told us they were going to give us, right? And so the only thing we can't control is if they decide at the town council level to not give us what's been recommended. But if they give us what's been recommended, we can forecast out over the next 5 years our revenue based on their 5-year projection, our state aid based on where we're at now with about a 3% increase. Now, we know there's no maintenance of effort connected to state aid, so that could go down. And then Chris kind of calculated out our costs and revenue expenses all the way across. The last thing that came out of today's meeting is we actually added that last column to the right that says, I think, 2930. Wait a second, I don't have my glasses on. Oh, so the 2530 is the grand total, but the one before that says 30. So Chris added the 30 column because our last column ended at 29. When you look at your old one, you'll see that. And then Chris put in a grand total column because we thought it was important for you to see what it looks like over the course of 5 years. And so when you look at this document, we've done quite a bit to it to make it more up to date and fluid and, in real time. And so the other thing I wanted you to see is the way we built our budget, knowing that we're in a deficit, is we built our budget, pretty tightly. We did use percent increases, and we did use Chris's assumption sheet to put in some that calculation so that we can cover our expenses. But if you scroll all the way down to the bottom of it, below all the expenses, you'll see a purple row. And that purple row shows two things. It shows what the town has allocated to us in the form of deficit reduction. If you recall, the town at their revenue projection meeting said they would give us $2.5 million over 5 years. That's approximately $400,000+ a year. So we've calculated that in on top as revenue, and then on the bottom it shows it as like a fund balance, right? Just like we did in this budget with the 140,000, we show it as a revenue, but we're supposed to have it left over at the end of the year because then it applies to our deficit. But the other thing that last column shows you is the money that we look at being projected savings based on our cuts and allocations that we did. So when you look at that one going across, you'll see over the course of 5 years between what the town's given us and what we're looking at as projected savings, coming in about $5,178,000. The reason why I'm pointing this out to you is that we're getting very close to the point now where we are going to be able to develop our deficit reduction plan. Like that $5.1 million is a big part of us getting to where we need to be to close the $5.8 million gap. So I wanted you to see that. And so I appreciate Chris pulling this all together for like a fourth time, right? And adding the additional information just so you can see what that looks like. In terms of the rest of the agenda item, it talks about FY24 audit update. And I'm going to have Chris give that. But in terms of the part about our deficit reduction plan, I think I've kind of addressed it through this. And unless Chris feels like there's something that needs to be added to what I said, I'll turn it over to him to talk about the audits.
Yeah, just real quickly on this one, I think that the first page, the top 2 lines with numbers are the ones that really got updated. We used as Don said, we used the town's 5-year projection figure of what they're projecting to give the school as that top row. And then they also had budget, or they put in their 5-year projection the amounts that they anticipate to give towards the school's accumulated deficit. So that would be that second row with numbers there that ends up with the 2.5 million. So then, like I said, at the end, by adding the fifth year and adding the totals, you can sort of quantify what we're projecting as progress towards that accumulated deficit. So there's definitely, there'll be additional work to do to find, some other savings. And I'm sure this is going to be a fluid, evolving document as we continue to work with the town and the Auditor General and the state. And I will just say, as you alluded to, the meeting today, I think this was probably, out of all the Auditor General meetings, sometimes that's like, feels way worse than ever going to the dentist. This was actually a good one. There's a lot of, we felt like we made progress. It seems, everybody was in a much better mood or more promising based on everything we discussed today. And this incorporates the RFP savings from the healthcare, going to, saving by going to the trust, so that there's savings there, and that's been factored in to this projection. And yeah, as far as the audit update, we recently had while I was out, they issued the 23 financial statement. So we checked another, thing off our list of things that we're trying to do to catch up collectively as a town in school. And where we discussed the FY24 audit, we've already begun. We've received that, their what they call a PBC list. It's what they want to be provided by their client, which is us in the town. And we've already been, checking off, prioritizing that and uploading to their portal information that they're going to need to really get going on the 24 audit. So we're hoping that's going to be able to, we'll gain some traction on that and be able to, look at really getting into that perhaps, midway or 3/4 of the way through April. I think it was the consensus after talking to the auditors and their availability and where we stand right now. So Ming Yu has been doing a lot to help gather the information that they're going to need for that audit. And I think that's our next big project to do. And once that's done, I think another thing that they mentioned too in that meeting, besides the audit, was that the rating came back for the bond rating. So these are all good, positive things that came out of the meeting today. So still a lot of work to do, but we're now working on 24, and then hopefully 25, everything will be completed in a better time frame, going forward.
Thank you for that update. Any comments or questions from members of the committee? Member Mayor.
Thank you, everyone, for your work on this. And I don't know who to ask this to anyone's knowledge, has the town proposed any possible meeting dates to draft the reduction plan that we can submit?
I don't know of a meeting that's been suggested or scheduled. I do know that between the two sides of the street, the leadership in terms of Chris and myself and the town manager and the finance director, based on today's meeting, I see us getting together pretty closely, pretty soon in terms of coming together and creating a draft. And then I think that would be sort of the spark to get the next thing going. The only thing that kind of sits in front of us is this 24 audit, right? So we have done our own calculations and we have, used the number $5.8 million as an accumulated deficit, but that last year, 24 is an unaudited year. And so before we do a final deficit reduction plan, I think 24 audit needs to be done. So then where you really truly sit. But I think we feel fairly confident that we're pretty much there. And so we definitely could pull together a draft and start floating that around a little bit and then coming together and finalizing it. If people want to provide input or suggestions, obviously that would be welcomed. I do also believe that we already scheduled our next meeting with the Auditor General in April. And I think at that meeting, there also will be continued conversation about what the first draft of this deficit reduction plan should look like and how they're going to support that, because I know they have some specific input and they may even have a template that they want us to use. So we want to make sure we have everything tied up nicely. So when we move forward, we're not taking any steps backwards.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Cool, I see none. I will echo the sentiment of thank you for the hard work being put into this. I guess the one concern I have, and it's not anything we can do about it, is that the budgets may be finalized before we complete the 24 audit. And I'm also concerned about 24 audit timeline and how that impacts our ability to bond for the school building bond. And we need to start focusing on that work very soon also. Okay, thank you. Next item on the agenda is Equity Initiative Extension Approval, MOU, for discussion and vote.
If you recall at the last meeting, I had you all sign a letter, and that letter was sent to RIDE. It was the letter requesting a one-year extension on the Equity Initiative grant. That extension has been approved. And so for those of you that have been on the committee before, what they do is send back an MOU to us that also requires all your signatures. So I have another document that's going to come down the line for you all to sign, and that's just the official signed document. Once we get it back to Jackie, she'll scan it in, and then we'll send it to RIDE, and then that will kind of formalize the one-year extension.
Thank you. Any comments or questions on the MOU? Seeing none, is there a motion to approve the Equity Initiative extension?
I make a motion to approve the Equity Initiative Extension Approval MOU.
Second.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Yeah, pass this down the line. All right, thank you for that. Next item on the agenda is disposition of assets obsolete and or unrepairable for special education for discussion and vote.
Yeah, so prior school committees and finance directors and superintendents had built out a process for the disposition or the opportunity to take equipment, whether it's vehicles or other equipment, out of our programs and destroy them if they have no value. And we don't want people just throwing things away, especially expensive things. So we have a process that's been built. There's even a policy around it, I think, that just says this is how you do it. So our special ed directors, Fred, the director, and Allison, the assistant director, have worked with different support staff to look at some of the equipment that we've had for a number of years for some of our students. I think they've given you a form that lists all the equipment types and then a picture so you can see what it looks like. These pieces can't be repaired. There's nothing you can buy that's going to fix them. They are not functioning. They are not even in our rotation of equipment that we're using with kids. They're literally sitting in a room at Oak Haven, taking up space. And go ahead. And they're unsafe, right? So that's why they're out of the rotation. They just have to go. And so to formalize that process, we put together this list with the pictures, and we just need you to vote on it, approve it. I didn't sign this particular document, but I will. And then once that's done, then we'll move forward with destroying them.
Thank you. Any comments or questions? Seeing none, is there a motion to approve the disposition of assets?
I make a motion to approve disposition of assets obsolete and or unrepairable special education.
I second.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Next item on the agenda is CHS DECA National Competition Field Trip to Orlando, Florida for discussion and vote.
Yep, this is according to our field trip policy, anytime a field trip is more than 100 miles away, it comes to the school committee for approval. This one is clearly 100 miles away because it's in Florida. I'm excited about this one in particular because DECA used to be a pretty strong program in Coventry at the high school years back, and it kind of lost its footing a little bit. And one of our teachers has, dedicated herself to kind of bring it back to life. So we have a DECA club. Again, they've competed locally, and this is their opportunity to compete nationally. So this is their field trip, and we're just looking for approval of this trip.
Thank you. Any comments or questions? Yeah, Member Carlo.
I knew somebody was going to ask me that. And here's the worst part about it. My own daughter, my number 3, competed in the DECA National Championship 3 times, so I should know what it stands for. Distributive Educational Club of America. So basically, it's like business, right? Like entrepreneurship, business, marketing, promotion, and the kids compete in a variety of different categories. It's almost like Skills USA, but it's very focused on business.
They used to fill the high school auditorium every Christmas with gifts, right?
I
Is this
don't
the
know.
same program?
Yes.
Yeah.
My veteran people are nodding yes. Yes.
I remember that program being huge, so we need to really focus on bringing that back. They did a lot of good.
Yeah, that's why I was very excited to
Yeah.
see. And this was a teacher who said, listen, this is something I want to do. And she's taken it and run with it. So
Any other comments or questions? And I'll echo the thank you for clarifying the acronym because acronyms are too many. There are too many acronyms in education and government.
and if I can intervene, Kelly, it's Mrs. Richards, right? Business teacher. Yeah. So it's Mrs. Richards. I keep saying the teacher, but she should get credit. She's done a lot of work here.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that. Is there a motion to approve the DECA National Competition Field Trip?
I make a motion to approve the CHS DECA National Competition Field Trip to Orlando, Florida.
Second.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Chair votes aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Next item on the agenda is CHS Boys Volleyball Trip to New Jersey for discussion and vote.
Yes, similar in nature. This is a field trip more than 100 miles away. It's the boys volleyball team, and they're traveling to New Jersey.
Any comments or questions on this field trip? Seeing none, is there a motion to approve the field trip?
I make a motion to approve the Coventry High School boys volleyball field trip to New Jersey.
A second.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Next item on the agenda is item M, Digital Technology Acceptable Use and Internet Safety Policy, GBEE, for first reading, discussion and vote.
Yeah, and if you don't mind, I'm kind of going to talk about these 3 as a bundle, if it's okay, because they're all very closely related. You can vote on them any way you want, but I just want to kind of talk about them together.
Okay.
So I've asked Jim to come to the podium because he's our technology director, and he had come to me at some point recently and said, we have these 3 policies that need to, one of them needed to be updated and 2 needed to be added in. And so we spent 2 or 3 meetings in policy subcommittee, updating the one policy that needed updating and then creating the other 2 policies. They have to do with, acceptable use. One has to do with AI and one has to do with cybersecurity. So I had Jim go to the podium just in case if there's any question about any of them, the chair can decide how he wants to proceed, but Jim's available to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any comments or questions from member of the committee? We'll start with digital technology and acceptable use policy. I see none. I'll just add to the conversation on this. This policy in particular was first approved many years ago when we first got Chromebooks in the district. And it hasn't been substantially revised since then. There's been minor updates. So it was very exciting to remove a lot of redundant language out of this policy.
Yeah,
That's
there
all
was
I'll
a lot of
say.
redundancy in this
Yes, absolutely. Is there a motion to approve the digital technology policy?
I make a motion to approve the digital technology acceptable in use and internet safety policy. Is that right?
Yes.
Second.
Any further discussion? And this is the first reading. All in favor?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Next is the artificial intelligence policy, JIJ. That's a big, long one, sorry. JICJA for first reading, discussion and vote. Any comments or questions on the artificial intelligence policy? Yes. Member Dos Reis Couto.
So, for the artificial, for AI and the use, are we going to revisit this policy on a yearly basis, given that AI is changing at the speed of light?
I do think that we'll have to revisit AI probably annually.
And are we putting, I know that this is a policy, are we enhancing more guardrails against on students using the AI?
So yes, this is more centered around what we're allowing them to do and fostering positive use of it.
Okay,
But
thank
you're
you.
right, it's changing at the speed of light.
I'll add to that a little bit. There are definitely some guardrails in the handbook and especially in the discipline code where it's very clear that AI is not to be used, especially generative AI. That's really what we're talking about. Used to create reports or work that's going to be presented and graded. As Mr. Murphy pointed out, this is more to how do we encourage, ethical use or positive use of the technology. I won't protest the light years thing but I know this stuff's been around since the 70s, but we haven't seen it. But yeah, it's really as Member Dos Reis Couto said, it's really about putting up guardrails and encouraging positive use because it's a technology we expect our students to be able to go out and use at some point in their work environment. It is exploding as far as how widely it's being used. So any further comments or questions on this policy? Seeing none, is there a motion to approve the policy? First reading.
I make a motion to approve the artificial intelligence policy, JICJA, first reading.
Second,
Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
aye.
Chair votes aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 7-0. And the third policy is the cybersecurity policy, EHAC, for first reading, discussion and vote. And Jim, could you just talk to this one
Sure.
briefly?
So what our insurance carrier is looking for, there's a list of several different things that they're looking for in order for us to be carried for cybersecurity insurance. And these three documents are important to them. So this policy just sort of directs me and my department to create and maintain these documents and make them available when we need them, when we need to access them.
Perfect. Thank you. Any comments or questions on this policy? Seeing none, is there a motion to approve the cybersecurity policy?
I make a motion to approve the cybersecurity policy, EHAC first reading.
Second.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Thank you, Mr. Murphy. We're doing a second reading, so you have to get up again next time. Next item on the agenda is Superintendent Report, Grant Award Update.
So Jim has a document he'll pull up. This is going to be pretty brief, but there's definitely been a theme this year with this new committee. And I think it's fantastic because, we're working so hard on our budget and people are really encouraging us to look at opportunities to find funding anywhere we can. And so, a lot of times when we're talking about big ticket items or things that need to get done, folks are asking about, have we looked into grants? Have we done our due diligence to find alternate ways to pay for things? And we had a whole bunch of things all happen at one time. And so I just thought I'd put them on one document and just give you a little quick update on some grant work. So on the top, you'll see, I got to put my glasses on. And actually, I have this in my agenda, so I could probably just put it in front of me. So we meet with the trust, who's our insurer. They do our, workman's comp, and we have a safety committee meeting. And that safety committee meeting meets like on a monthly basis. And the trust puts out a number of grants to encourage safe practices or things that you can do to improve your school. And three of the people who attend those meetings, Russ Hill, our facilities director, Allison Roby, the assistant director, and Fred assistant director of special ed, and Fred Shockhart, the director of our special ed department, all put in applications for grants, and they were all approved. And so Russ put in a grant for the purchase of Braille lettered emergency safety signs for Coventry High School. So he received $972. Allison Roby put in a safety grant for the purchase of mats and other foam flooring to create dedicated sensory space for students with ASD. She received $1,000. Fred put in a grant to provide neuropsychological and BCBA consultation to teachers and staff in our Unified Learning and Support Services Department, and he received $2,000. So those were three grants that actually came out of one meeting that they wrote very quickly because the deadline was on top of us, and they all received those grants. So congratulations to the three of them. And they're also going to attend a luncheon. The trust is putting on a luncheon where they're going to recognize, acknowledge the work and the grants. Lori Ferguson, who's our career and tech person, she also wrote a grant and for middle school career exploration expansion. And it's for the middle school level, and it was for $3,904. And she's already received that grant as well. And then these grants are sort of in process. Amy is working on both of them, so thank you to Amy. The first one has been submitted, and I'm gonna put some context around this one. And Amy, if you feel like you need to jump in, you can. So the governor had created this Learn 365 RI Municipal Learning Initiative, and the funding for those projects actually runs through the municipality. It doesn't run to the Department of Ed or through the school department. But a lot of the projects that they're looking to do require our expertise on the school department side to put together. And so the town manager reached out to Amy and I and said, listen, there's an opportunity here for this grant. It's focused on math. If you guys want to write it, we can put it together and submit it. So Amy pulled together some math teachers, some interventionists, and they wrote a grant. And the grant is, and this is sort of like a summary of what she'd like to do. And I think depending on how much money she gets, we'll adjust it up or down. But she's looking at some after-school math academies from the months of April to June, which would be about $36,000. And there's a description there of what those academies would do. And then she was also looking for some summer integrated math ramp-up projects, which run from July to August, for the cost of about $63,000, $63,500. So her range in her request was $55,000 to $100,000. And we know that $55,000 was allocated to us. We know that off the top, but we had heard from some folks at Department of Ed that a number of municipalities had already notified them that they had no interest in putting in for these grants. And so when they don't put in for them, the pot grows for everybody else because there's more money available. So Amy, not knowing exactly what that dollar amount would be, wrote the grant to a range from 55 to 100, assuming that if it gets approved, we're going to get more than the minimum, and then she can implement them. So congratulations, Amy, on writing and submitting that. And then something that I think we're still working on, I don't think we've submitted it yet, was there's local LEAs can submit a grant for $10,000. I think it has to be spent by the end of the year around health. It could be a few things, right? It could be about wellness. It could be about behavioral health. It could be about actual health education and resources. And so I think, Amy, you decided with your team to use that $10,000 grant towards health. And that's going to be submitted, I think, shortly. And then That's on a rolling basis. I don't think that one has a deadline, but the money does have to be spent by the end of the year. So she has that one in process as well. So, you know, in a one-page summary that I've provided for you, there's a substantial amount of funding that we got through grants, or we have the potential to get through grants that are for things that I think are important that don't come out of our general fund.
Thank you. Any comments or questions from members of the committee? Member Carlo?
Two questions. Have we seen any grants in like the math for like English? Because we were looking at a lot of the testing for English, and it seems like a lot of our students struggle with English, and that's why you have that ELA curriculum in the middle school. Is there anything out there that we can look into for English?
As of right now, I don't have anything. There is a grant coming up for ELA, but it has to be specifically spent on certain things, but not in the summer. So we actually just had that conversation in one of the meetings that we had relative to how do we do the math one? Where else can we get some ELA funding? So there are two people that are looking for ones to be able to support. One of the things we're using the money for is some credit recovery for middle school students. And also there's middle school students that want to get into Algebra 1 a little earlier in 8th grade, but didn't get into that ramp up class. So the middle school teachers want to provide extra, like an incentive for kids to participate in that. But simultaneously, we also know we need to do it for reading as well. And we don't have a grant right now for that, so fingers crossed. that we can get
And if it's okay for me to add, we actually just wrapped up a grant, CLSD grant that we received a few years back. It was a 3 or 5 year grant. I can't remember, but it was for $500,000, and part of it was for pre-K, I believe, and then part of it was for secondary, for our middle school and high school. And some of the funds from that grant were used for professional development and purchasing of materials, and that was $500,000. That one just closed, I think, just recently. So when they're available, we apply, and we've been pretty fortunate to get some of the funding that's been available. But you know, we're trying hard to be on the lookout for different opportunities to support our students with funds that don't necessarily have to come from, you know, just one
And John, we also
pot.
have the civics education grant that Kelly's participating in as well. So Kelly is actually one of the liaisons, her and the middle school teacher to, and Kelly could do a better job explaining to get trained in the civics education.
That's right.
Right,
Yeah, it's just so if anybody couldn't hear, so we also received the civics education grant, and
It was 4,000.
$4,000, but it provides training for our teachers because civics is one of the curriculum areas that's, you know, required with some of the legal changes that have come through the General Assembly over the last few years. So that's another opportunity. So congratulations, Kelly.
And my second question or comment, I'm really excited to see this health grant. I really think not only because my daughter's in middle school, but a lot of the middle school kids are learning how to take care of themselves. And I think a health class would be huge. Because I've talked to the nurse and they're really struggling coming into their own. And I really think this would be a great thing to add to Coventry.
And so, you know, again, it's asking teachers and others that are doing this work, right? What do they need? And so Lolita Roberts, who's the phys ed and health curriculum coordinator at the high school, and Julie Marin, who's working on the health curriculum with the other health and phys ed teachers at the elementary, are two right now that are really focused in it. So they are working together as a team to figure out what are the materials and things that they need to enhance their program.
Yeah. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Vice Chair Dos Reis Kuto.
I just have a comment. This is well done. Thank you to all that wrote and looking for these grants. I think they're critical in supporting our students and our budget as well. So thank you very much for your hard work.
Any other comments or questions? I'll just echo that sentiment. Congratulations and thank you to all the hard work being put in to get grants. It's money that doesn't come from the local tax base, and it really helps improve the educational environment for our students and families. So thank you for that. Next item on the agenda is item Q, citizens' comments. If any citizens gathered would like to speak for citizens' comments, please come up to the microphone, state your first and last name and address for the record, please. I see a taker. Thank you for your comment and thank you for working with the superintendent on this issue before bringing it to the school committee. That's appreciated. Terrific. Any other citizens' comments? Seeing none, we'll move to Zoom. There's still two people on Zoom. I have a glare. If anyone on Zoom would like to speak during public comment, please raise your hand and wait to be called upon. I'm ducking because there's a glare, not because I want to look weird. Seeing none, going once, twice, 3 times. Citizens' comments is closed. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is scheduling of the next meeting. Is there a motion to schedule the next meeting for March 27th?
I make a motion to schedule the next meeting for March 27, 2025 at 6 PM at Tyoke Elementary School.
Is there a second?
I second.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 7-0. And finally, is there a motion to adjourn at 7:52 PM?
I make a motion to adjourn at 7:52 PM.
Second.
All in favor? Chair votes aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Thank you, everyone.